Okay, I'm talking with John Cardoza, past president for a lot of years of the California High School Speech Association.
Actually.
Six?
Six.
Is that the most?
No, Donovan Cummings served a term of 2 years and then served a term of 4 years, 2 separate terms. And he had the most. And then my 6 years was 6 years in a row.
Consecutive,
So
yeah.
I have so far the record for the most consecutive years.
Oh,
as
okay.
president.
And I
But
doubt that that's one that anybody really wants to challenge.
I don't think anybody wants to be president for more than 6 years. That anybody wants to be president for more than 4 years is amazing to me.
Or, as
Or
my
two.
outlook on life, anybody that wanted to be president. Well, we'll just move on. With that as sort of a beginning, we do our flashback now.
Right.
Because we're going to be fairly chronological here and ask about those long gone early days. Where were you born? Where'd you go to school? And that kind of stuff.
The records were lost in the Great Fire.
Okay, all right.
In 1666. No, I was actually born in San Jose, and my early years, pre-teen years, were in Cupertino, California. But then my family moved to Wairika, and I must stress that that's
Wairika. Okay.
which is from the ancient Indian, which means where the heck am I, as opposed to Eureka. Now, Wairika is in Siskiyou County on I-5. If you pass through Wairika and get to Oregon, it takes 22 miles to get to Oregon from Wairika.
So you're way up there.
Very far. And that's where I spent my high school years, in Wairika, where I met Rita Pritchard.
Where you knew Rita, yes. We'll maybe hear about that a little bit later. If not from you, from Rita.
Okay.
Well, tell me this then. In high school, was there any forensics, any competition that you did?
Yes. Our speech drama coach, the drama speech team, was headed up by Mr. Norman Berryhill. And I joined my sophomore year. Rita Dexter at the time was a fresh person. And we were on the team together and in place together until I graduated. She, of course, her senior year. And we didn't really compete in California league competitions because we didn't belong to a league being that far north. But we competed in college invitationals. Southern Oregon College, which is now Southern Oregon University, Chico State, which is now Cal State University Chico, and then local speech contests by the VFW and the Lions Clubs and American Legion.
So what did John do?
Impromptu, oratory, where I got my love for Lions Club, and duo interp with Rita. She was my duo interp partner.
Okay. Do you remember any of your oratory topics or your duo scripts or anything?
The oratory topics in the Lions Club was law and liberty, and what democracy means to me.
I guess it
That
shows
was VFW.
how much older I am, because I remember teaching that topic to students when you were, I guess, competing with those topics.
Right, Jimmy Madison and I were in competition directly with that topic. Rita Dexter and I competed on the Chico State campus. We inaugurated their stage at the time with an excerpt from Midsummer Night's Dream.
Okay. Alrighty, and after your exciting days in Wairika and Wairika High School, where did that lead you collegiately?
I went to Santa Clara University,
Back home.
California's first institution of higher learning, no matter what UOP says. And I did not compete in
No
college
competition.
at all.
College major was?
History, with a minor in theology.
Okay. All right. And that took you to, did you immediately become a teacher or did you have something
Actually,
in between?
yes, because I wanted to be a teacher from the 6th grade. I decided to be a teacher and went to Santa Clara University, received my bachelor's degree, was in the workforce for about 6 months, and then got a teaching position at a local Catholic school, St. Joseph's Middle School in San Jose, which is now gone. Demolished,
Yeah,
the
okay.
whole thing. And I taught there for 2 years, then had an opportunity to take a job in Stockton, of all places, at Presentation Elementary School. Took the job there, and in the meantime also got my teaching credential from Santa Clara University, where I eventually would receive my master's degree. So I have all my
Everything's from Santa
credentials
Clara.
From Santa Clara.
So you always wanted to be a teacher?
Yes.
Why was that?
I don't know. It's
Any in the family?
No, none whatsoever. I'm the first person in my family, and the only person in my immediate family to ever have graduated from college.
All right. So then when did you start teaching at St. Mary's?
1977.
Okay.
And I was, my first year, I had 6 classes to teach, 4 preps, 3 classrooms. I was the assistant speech coach, the assistant wrestling coach, the assistant track coach, and the freshman class advisor.
What'd you do in your spare time?
That's right. To tell you the truth, just before I was at St. Mary's, I had been working as the assistant manager for White Stock's department store in Stockton while I was teaching a presentation. And when I took the job at St. Mary's, that's when I dropped the job.
On a sidebar here, you said assistant wrestling coach, and I know you did some of that for a longer period of time.
Right.
Were you involved in athletics in high school? Gotcha. How did you become all of a sudden a wrestling coach?
First of all, they needed someone at St. Mary's, and I needed a job. So I said, I'll do anything you want.
That's how a lot of people get their speech jobs.
Exactly.
Did you have any background and knowledge of wrestling?
None whatsoever. My godson was a wrestler.
Oh, okay.
And he got me interested and involved because I went to all of his matches.
Okay.
So.
How long did this last with the wrestlers?
2 years as assistant coach, 4 years as head coach.
Oh.
I had the distinction at St. Mary's. They've only had one wrestler achieve the national level of competition.
And that was during your time?
And that was when I was head coach.
Well, very good. Very good. How soon did you take over the forensic?
1979, I took over. And then
was it a very small program?
Tiny. There were maybe 4 kids.
Okay.
And when I finally left St. Mary's in 1995, we had a team of 50.
What did you do specifically to get it in that period of time from a group of 4 or 5 to a group of 18 to 20?
I couldn't tell you. I do know that thanks to my colleagues in the Yosemite Forensic League, I got involved in going to invitationals, and the prospect for the students of being able to travel to college campuses and see a college campus, to be away from home for a weekend, and to be involved in an academic activity, put all those things together, and people were joining because they had the opportunity to travel. I think they also joined because the team itself was a space where they could have friends and some camaraderie going on after school and before school. My classroom was the safe area for students to gather. We had a coffee corner, and they had coffee every day, and it's sort of like a little coffee shop at school.
Did you ever get this built into a class, or were you always extracurricular?
When I took over, it was a class for about 1 year.
4 or 5?
No, it was, the class was not competitive.
Oh, okay.
Not a competitive class at all. But that was finally dropped because, well, and to be honest with you, so one of the reasons was I asked for it to be dropped. I was getting the sense that if kids could take a speech course, then the other teachers saw speech activities as an adjunct to education, not a central part of our education. And so, because I think oral communication skills are centered to the skills we have to teach our students, I said we have to drop the speech class and make sure that speech is included across the curriculum. That was the beginning of my
I was going to
goal.
say, that's been your thing for some
my
time.
mantra.
So would you say then you would be a strong advocate of not having forensics a class,
Yes, I am.
even a larger program. There are some who succeed very well that way.
I would not mind it if it were, this class is a competitive course. This is where the competition is.
But not as an adjunct to a speech class.
Not as an oral communications
I
course at
gotcha.
high school level. And then when you have it as a class, as a competitive class, what you do is you effectively separate students from the activity, because many students cannot fit it into their schedule. They say, well, I can't join the speech team because I have to take AP history and I can't take the speech class. I think we shouldn't have PE classes that are just for football players, for example. We don't. CIF doesn't allow for that. So I don't think we should allow for that in speeches as well. It should be something that students do because they enjoy it and they take their learning outside the classroom.
Let's follow that career. I know that St. Mary's has not been the end of your speech coaching. What happened after that?
I stopped being a classroom teacher at St. Mary's in 1989 when I was appointed assistant superintendent for the Catholic schools of the Diocese of Stockton. But when I took that job, the superintendent during the interview asked if I had any questions. And I said, well, yes. Bottom line is I would love to be assistant superintendent, but only with the proviso that I maintain my position as coach at St. Mary's speech team.
And since there were an abundance of people clamoring for that job.
Exactly. The superintendent looked at me and she said, you don't seem to understand what I'm offering you. The reason you're getting this job is because you are the speech coach at St. Mary's. She had been to a number of speech tournaments and she was impressed with what the activity did for students. And so she was hoping to bring me into the position to see if I could spread that whole philosophy of learning outside the classroom and that disciplines should not be separated at the high school level. We should be more integrated. So I took the job in 1989 as assistant superintendent, but I maintained my position as speech coach at St. Mary's through 1995. During that time, Tokay High School up in Lodi lost their coach, and the students on their speech team came to me and asked if I would help them maintain their team. And so I was the Tokay High School speech coach for a year, while I was also St. Mary's High School speech coach.
All right, and from there, the next stop?
1995, I moved to Carondelet High School in Concord as the assistant principal, and they already had a speech team that was established 2 years prior with my help. And when I got there, I said I'd be glad to go to tournaments with the coach. She was a young woman at Carondelet. I said, I'd be glad to go to tournaments with you as a coach, assistant, and she said, fine. So I went to speech tournaments from 1995 to 1997. When she moved on to another school, I took over the team at Carondelet.
Now, at the time you were in administration, correct?
Right, I was assistant principal.
All right. And from Carondelet to your current, well, as we record in 2009, your current home?
My current school is Delta Charter High School in Tracy, California. In 2 years ago, 2007, I leaped the altar rail and joined the public schools.
What do you find the difference in what you're, I know because it's a charter school, that makes it different too.
Right.
But what do you see is the biggest difference in what you do in life in a public school as opposed to the parochial?
Luckily, charter schools are exempt from many of the bureaucratic regulations, but not all of them. So the biggest change from Catholic to public schools, aside from the ability to speak openly about spiritual values, is the amount of bureaucratic regulation that one has to contend with in the public schools. I'm very fortunate. I have an administration that's very supportive of students and student activities. Speech is their #1 priority at the school. #1 priority of the school.
That's fantastic. I know of nowhere where they can claim that.
The principal has to be asked, no, that's wrong. The principal has to be begged not to go to a speech tournament so that she can have a day off. She goes to
Wonderful.
every speech tournament. She drives to every invitational. She's a chaperone at every invitational we go to. She made sure that in the schedule there's time set aside for a competitive speech class, which fits right in with my philosophy. Funding is never an object. Is that right? No, never a barrier.
Sounds like
Obstacle.
you're almost in the perfect world.
Oh, it's wonderful. She's very supportive. Superintendent is very supportive, and the school board is very supportive of the speech team.
So you've gone from St. Mary's to Carondelet to Delta Charter, and with all of that, where do you find and what do you remember as some of your major forensic successes, the student successes, and however you want to measure success?
Oh gosh. There's the usual ones. My first state qualifiers in 1984 were John Moretto and Leslie Boggs in boys and girls extemp.
Yes.
I had a young lady, Valerie Rice, and I want to say it was 1984.
Well, we're all prone to
Yeah.
not be too specific.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it was 1984 because Tom Hanisco was a senior and Valerie Rice was a senior. They graduated in 84. My first state qualifiers were 82. Did I say 84?
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, they
We're
were
not
80
going to check you.
They were 82. But in 1984, Valerie Rice, brand new student at St. Mary's, talked her into joining this speech and debate team. She enjoyed it. She did Lincoln Douglas debate, I think, extemp, and state qualifier came around, and I said, I want you to try for Congress. And she said, I know nothing about Congress. I said, that's all right, Tom can teach you. And because that's how I usually ran the team. I let the kids teach each other. I stayed out of it. That's why they were so successful.
No.
And Tom taught her our own version of how to prepare for Congress.
Okay.
And she went to her first Congress tournament ever with state qualified to the state. And so that's a success story for me.
Right.
To step in
right.
and do that.
You had quite a few national qualifiers, I know.
Yes. But that's all in terms of the trophies and
Right.
qualifying.
And I would tend to agree. A lot of the successes never earned a lot of trophies.
Right. The ones who actually went to every tournament, had a good time, blossomed, who end up years later writing how much speech meant to them in high school, not just in the skills they learned, but in the associations they developed.
Right.
So that's the real success of speech, is what they've done for students in terms of their self-confidence and their self-image and
Right.
their lifelong friendships.
Okay, let's jump a little bit. And
Before you go though, my real success at St. Mary's, and the same thing at Carondelet and De La Salle, where I was the coach at De La Salle at the same time as I was at Carondelet, the real success for me is the fact that my students made friends with students from other teams and developed friendships with these students. My Carondelet girls met St. Mary's students at invitationals. Their common link was me, but they quickly developed friendships. And I have a young lady from Carondelet who is working on her doctoral degree right now in Seattle. She is a friend to a St. Mary's student who lives in San Francisco, and they met through speech. They're from not only different schools and different leagues, different towns, different walks of life. And that's what I really value, that students from different teams joined my team. One of my best friends is a doctor of political science in Maine, and he went to Downey High School, but he's friends with my St. Mary's kids.
tell me this, let's kind of expand on this. After high school, What kind of successes have some of these ex-students had in life?
It seems like nothing but successes. Nothing but successes. Every one of my students has gone on to a successful career of one sort or another. Some are very high up in their respective careers. Robin Kim, one of my most successful students ever, is now a senior vice president for an international public relations firm, and she's stationed in London, England. She's lived around the world. Another of my students that you'll remember is Nicholas Maduris. He's a successful lawyer, married in Washington, D.C. to a successful lobbyist. I don't know if that's a success story.
Well, hey, all these names you've mentioned I remember, so
Yeah.
I know you've had a lot of them. All right, a little more for you. What now in the organization, in the state speech organization and NFL, what offices have you had? What work have you done?
Once upon a time, I was the president of the Assembly Forensic League, having served as both secretary and I think I was the vice president. I can't remember.
Oh, probably.
I've been secretary for the YFL, then became president of the YFL. Was appointed secretary for the State Speech Association in 1989, and eventually was talked into being president. Served as president for 6 years, then went into retirement from state offices and league offices, but this year I was elected president of the YFL once again, mostly from not from lack of talent in the league, but from lack of interest. So they sort of came to the old dinosaur to take over again.
We've completed the circle.
So I'm back to where I
But
started.
that doesn't mean there's no place else to go. Okay, let's take those offices and see if we can pinpoint a few things that you feel were major accomplishments for you, that you feel extra good about.
Yes. I would say that as president of the California High School Speech Association, I can point to the following. Number one and foremost, I really made an effort to reach out to younger coaches who had not been part of the inner circle of state speech leaders that had served on the council forever, and brought them into the council through my ability to bring them on as secretaries, or in the case of Mr. Reed naming as vice president of activities. Be able to bring people from the outside into the inner circle and help to bring their youthful spirit, their youthful enthusiasm, and their ideas, their very constructive and innovative ideas, to the State Speech Council. The ballots that we are still using, and I know that Don Cummings never liked me to say this, but I still refer to them as the Barrick ballots, because Danny Barrick, who was my secretary for a while and had served with me in the Golden Gate Speech Association, Danny Barrick, the style of these ballots was his original idea. And so I credit him with those ballots. And what they do is they tie what we do as an organization into the state standards and make it very public that what we do is an educational, valuable activity. So I'm very proud of that. The fact that Reed, Mimi, and I started the association on the path towards an electronic era where we started using computers to
Oh yeah, tell me
prepare for the
about
state.
it. Tell me about it.
Having to teach Ron Underwood how to do a database, and if he can do it,
Anybody can do it, right.
So I think those two accomplishments, and the third one was I honestly feel I brought a sense of a different sense of decorum and professionalism to the state council meetings themselves, in the sense of it's not a good old boys network, but it's really a working organization of professionals who have a sense of integrity and transparency to their constituency.
Okay. How about thinking back with me again to just one or two standout state tournaments, incidents maybe that you remember most from state competition from state operations.
When we had to close the state tournament in San Jose.
Anyone that was there says that.
Yes, exactly. There was that one. And that's the one that stands out for me because...
What position were you at that time?
I think I was secretary.
Okay.
I had the feeling I was. But what strikes me about it is not the fact that we had to close down the state tournament early and the sense of real concern for the safety and security of our students because of the riots in San Jose, but the fact that every coach rallied around the safety and security of their students, and the students were the focus, not the competition, not the sense of, oh, we're not going to be able to get this trophy or that trophy. It was the safety and security of the students that was essential, and making sure the students felt that they were safe and secure and calm. There was no sense of panic. There was no sense of impending doom. It was, this is what we have to do. And these were coaches who are not paid any extraordinary amounts, if any at all, who behaved in the most professional manner and came together as colleagues to take care of their kids. That's what really strikes me about that, and how quickly it happened. And it was not a sense of personality, it was a sense of kids.
Any other that you'd want to share?
I can't think of any other state tournaments that were...
Everybody that was there,
yeah.
I think will always remember that one.
That was the one.
As you've come this road to get where you are today, there has to be some others that you've met along the way that stand out to you. Maybe you can call them mentors, those who you feel contributed to your growth in speech communication. Who would you say this might be? Those who you met along the way that maybe meant something to you?
Well, has the top three, which is not to denigrate any of the others that I've met along the way. First and foremost, obviously, is going to be Don Cummings, who
right.
has mentored so many across the state, and who has been a rock for the entire state. Whose sense of the value of competitive education is so very clear, where he pushed kids in all areas. He didn't specialize in any one. He was good in all the different areas of speech, and he really pushed kids to do their best, and he reached out to other coaches to help them do their best. So Don Cummings is there. Tom Montgomery, who is a dear friend for many years, who was, although he's younger than I, he was in the business longer than I, and he took me aside and taught me about invitationals and how to prepare kids for invitationals, and he took care of my kids when I wasn't around, and they knew they could always turn to Tom and you, because I know you don't remember this incident.
All right, shake my memory.
It was I'm convinced it was at a state qualifying tournament. It was held at Bayer High School, so it had to be a state qualifying tournament. And one of my students had made some sort of error and could have been told he could not compete. He had missed a round, or he found a room wrong, or something inconsequential actually, but it was totally irresponsible on his part, Tom Anderson. And I said, well, I can't make that decision. I said, I'd have to go to the president of the league, and I believe you were president at the time, and we'll see what Mr. Underwood has to say. And of course, you were going to let the kid compete because you're all about the kids. But the way because I forced the boy to come to you, the way you listened to his plea, and the respect you showed him, and the gentleness you had towards him, which you didn't always show to us in the league meetings, but your gentleness and your respect for that kid, I'm sure must have made an impression on him, because he was so grateful that he'd be allowed to continue competition because of your graciousness. So those three coaches have been my mentors in not only direct instruction, but modeling as you have done.
Well, it's nice to be remembered. If you could bring this all to a climax, what do you think your greatest contributions or contribution to speech has been overall?
Reed Deemy.
Okay. Elaborate just a bit. I understand, but can you elaborate? Because I know he wasn't your student.
No, Reed Deemy was a student of Donovan Cummings. And Reed Deemy is one of those students who got along well with my students, and et cetera, et cetera. So I've known him since he was freshman, 14 years old. But when we had a vacancy in the Vice President Activities Office at the State Council, I knew that Reed Deemy would be the perfect person for the job. And through parliamentary procedures, we were able to bring him onto the State Council. I won't go through the whole rigmarole of it, but he was willing to step up and take the most horrendous job at the State Council as the Vice President of Activities. And he was willing to step up, take that job. He held it for 4 years. And the way he helped to shape the state tournament and bring it further into the computer age, beyond the first baby steps to where it was, how he was able to maintain a sense of decorum, professionalism, and how he helped focus the state in terms of competition, not only on the students, but on the educational value of the activity. I think he was my greatest contribution to the state.
Super, absolutely. All right, the final two challenges. How do you feel speech has changed, speech education's changed through your career? Do you see that as for the good or the bad?
The good side of it is that we've expanded opportunities for students in so many different areas of competition. Beyond debate, when I started, it was policy debate, and we're adding Lincoln Douglas debate, and of course there was Congress. But expanded to parliamentary debate, which again, Reed was very instrumental in bringing to the state level. The opportunities for students to see various forms of debate activities, and in the individual events across the board, the oral interpretation of literature, how that's expanded from just DI and HI to include so much, the addition of original prose poetry, so we can reach out to the creative side of students. I think that's all been to the good. Unfortunately, every good has the dark side. The dark side is the complexity for the state tournament and how it can drain coaches of resources and personal time trying to teach all these different activities. The bad side to the growth of speech in California, I think it's endemic to competition. There's always going to be this constant focus on tweaking the rules, to try to make certain that no one cheats. And the attitude that there might be cheaters out there has always bothered me, because one of the bottom lines I have with my students, always have with my students, is you respect everyone's honesty and integrity and intent from the get-go. And you cannot accuse someone of unethical behavior, not to my face, unless you have incontrovertible proof. Merely because someone wins doesn't mean they're unethical. I think it's because they're good. And too many times in our community, there's the pettiness of sniping at the successful coach, the successful student, and the successful program with the use of the term unethical. From unethical coaching to unethical judging, it all comes down to a sense of winning at all costs, and I don't like it.
And what do you see for the future of California speech education? Or what would you like to to see?
What I would like to see is a re-emphasis on the need to teach oral communication skills across the curriculum, to focus in our competition, if we could just tie it much more strongly, especially in the debate areas, and certain of the individual events like advocacy or extemp, tie those into the state standards for social studies and English language arts, so that we are not an adjunct activity, we're an essential activity to student success.
And I've guided the questions all along here and ask you, now it's your turn to summarize all of this and add anything else that I didn't ask you that you'd like to say about John Cardoza.
I don't want to have anything more to say about me.
Or speech in California.
Or speech in California. One of the things I was able to emphasize when I worked for St. Mary's and Carondelet and De La Salle, because being religious schools, we were able to speak of spiritual values. But one of the things I'm also stressing in my current position as a public school teacher is the sense of personal values. Speech is an activity where students can learn responsibility, respect, and integrity. I mean, core values that will take them anywhere in the world. And as coaches, we have to model that as well as teach that. And I think our students grow stronger if we focus on the values that are integral to life, not just to an activity.
Thank you very much, John Cardoza.
Thank you.